Well, I'm going to go ahead and call you on that one, Game of Thrones, because by all means, that was ridiculous. That you can't do that. You can't just deal the other guy a fatal blow just for him to get back up and kill his opponent. That just does not happen. Unless the mountain has some Wolverine-esque healing factor, it just does not happen. By all means, he should be dead. I don't care how big he is, he should be dead. I mean, there was like a foot of blood on Oberyn's spear thing. So yeah, the mountain should be dead. Anyway, this episode was a decent one. Not one of their best, but also not one of their worst. 2 week hiatus left me hungry for more Game of Thrones. So again, the most interesting point in the episode was actually the beginning, when when uh, when Jon Snow and the other members of the Night's Watch are trying to figure out how to deal with the incoming wildling attack, and from what it looks like, that's going to be the main focus of the next episode. Just going by the promo, which that will provide the big battle for this season, because that has become basically become a tradition at this point. Have the big eventful, have the big season-changing event in episode 9, and then have the aftermath in episode 10. But yeah, I'm still really invested. By far, that still holds the most suspense for me, because the Wall, they have emphasized time and time again that the Wall is basically the last line of defense from the great unknown of the North. So if the wildlings breach the Wall, then that's it. I mean, it's like Osgiliath in Lord of the Rings. If Osgiliath falls, then that leaves the city of Minas Tirith ripe for attack, which is exactly what happened in Return of the King. Um, but I digress. That's really where a lot of the weight in this episode came from, in my opinion. That was where a lot of, from an arc perspective, from a seasonal arc, that was where a lot of the dramatic baggage was in this episode. The other plot lines, which all came afterwards, I didn't really think held as much suspense, because they kind of threw you for a loop. But it's not that kind of throwing you for a loop where you're like, oh my god, what a twist. It seems like they're throwing you for a loop just to throw you for a loop. I mean, it doesn't really feel like they completely earned that. With that said, the twists that they throw at you are not bad twists by any means. But it just seems like they just seem like plot devices to prolong the conflicts in each of their locations. The first being when Sir Barristan receives a letter from Tywin Lannister, and it's basically the letter that Ser Jorah received from Robert Baratheon in exchange for spying on Daenerys all the way back in season 1. So he basically tattles on Ser Jorah, and Daenerys banishes Ser Jorah from the city. Now, I'm not just saying this because of Emilia Clarke's deadpan expression and how basically Ian Glenn had to basically carry this entire scene by himself with no help from Emilia Clarke. But from a strategic standpoint, this still does not make sense. Daenerys seems to be making all sorts of bad decisions this season, and that seems to be the primary cause of her conflict. Because Ser Jorah even says, this is Tywin Lannister's work. He's trying to divide us. Instead of actually directly coming after us, he's trying to divide us. Divided we fall, and all that jazz. And even if Daenerys is too stupid to pick up on this, you would think a a seasoned old fighter like Sir Barristan would have picked up on this. You would think that he, I mean, where I thought it was going to go was he told Ser Jorah that he had the letters. He told Ser Jorah that he knew that he was previously a spy for Daenerys. So you would think, from a strategic perspective, it would make the most sense not to tell her so that they could all stay together and still function as one unit. And he would just kind of keep an eye on Ser Jorah from then on. But then he goes and, like I said, he tattles on him. So, A, that seems like a very underhanded move for someone who's supposed to be an honorable man. I mean, I know it's, if we're just going by black and white, that seems like the honorable move, and maybe it is, but because you are essentially telling the truth and exposing a liar, but I think, again, from a strategic standpoint, it doesn't really make sense, and the fact that Ser Jorah points this out just makes Daenerys seem like a moron, and it makes Sir Barristan seem like a moron. But something that actually caught my interest a little bit more was the budding romance between the leader of the Unsullied, Grey Worm, I believe his name is, and Daenerys's Afro assistant. I'm sorry, I don't know their names. I'm usually pretty good with names. But so many of the names in this world sound similar to each other. So because when they said Varys and then Viserys, I'm like, okay, Varys is the sneaky bald guy in King's Landing. Viserys was who? Oh yeah, her over-the-top brother. So I had to kind of pause and think, okay, who are these guys? Because they sound the same. I don't know if that was intentional, but again, I digress. But something that actually made me think a little bit more was, like I said, that budding romance between these two characters, and how they kind of questioned, how can... They didn't actually come right out and say this, but they kind of questioned, how could this possibly work? They did this without any words, or at least any direct words to each other, which I felt was pretty impressive for these two actors, to be able to silently convey that sort of uncertainty. But they kind of silently were wondering, how could this possibly work? I mean, he has no family jewels, because Unsullied are all eunuchs. They are castrated at an early age. So Daenerys is talking with her assistant, going, do you know if they take it all? And that kind of got me wondering, with my warped mind, that kind of got me wondering, I wonder if it's all an urban legend. I mean, I wonder if they just want people to think that they castrate these kids, and in reality, every single one of the Unsullied is well endowed. That would be a cool twist, or that would be a funny twist at the very least. So, yeah, I thought the Daenerys storyline was somewhat hit or miss, and that seems to be the overriding problem, because ever since Daenerys got an army, her conflict has been getting less and less interesting, in my opinion. I mean, she doesn't really have any more obstacles to overcome, at least not to the scale that she did in Season 1, because Season 1 she had to deal with an unwanted marriage to Conan the Barbarian, and also the violent relationship, the violent and at times incestual relationship that she had with her brother. So Season 1 was probably the most dangerous for her. But ever since then, she's just been kind of, like I said, her conflict is getting less and less extreme, to where it's at the point now where she's just dealing with mistrust. And mistrust can be handled very well, but I just think it didn't really make a whole lot of sense with how they integrated it here, because, like I said, I just pointed out some of the holes, some of the flaws in logic behind sending Jorah away. Now, where's he going to go? I don't know. But with that said, Ian Glenn does play it well. I mean, I've always liked Ian Glenn's character, and the way that he plays this scene, and how you can tell that he is expressing genuine regret at having ever agreed to this. But even then, I would have liked for him to have brought up the fact that, well, even after he got the pardon, he stuck with her. So that has to count for something. Again, I'm finding more and more holes in this decision, and I don't know if I'm going to get some comments that are going to say how wrong I am. But I don't know. It just didn't work for me. But this another big plot line this time around was Littlefinger, the Aidan Gillen character, kind of starting to seize control of the Vale, I believe it is, and how Sansa is actually kind of turning to the dark side, as it were. I mean, she's embracing the dark side, which that got a little chuckle out of me when she shows up in this black Maleficent style dress, or not Maleficent, but she honestly, Sansa at the end of the episode comes out looking like Helena Bonham Carter, with this straight black dress on and these ridiculous adornments. So I'm not sure if that was actually meant to be played for comedic effect. Probably not. But I don't know. It just seemed a little too in your face in terms of the visual aid of her kind of turning to Littlefinger's side. But with that said, Littlefinger is becoming interesting. I mean, like I said in previous vlogs, I hadn't really cared about Littlefinger up until this point. I mean, he didn't seem very good at his job. But now that he's actually starting to gain some control, and now that he's actually starting to gain some of his own initiative, rather than trying to navigate around people more powerful than him right in the next room, like Tyrion and Tywin and whatever. Now that he's actually becoming a key player, like I said, he's just more interesting. I mean, I'm infinitely more invested in him now than I was back in season 1. Because he seems to be making, I mean, without a doubt, he's making a grab at power, and he seems to know the way things work, so that certainly helps. I mean, he says, Lysa, a woman like her wasn't really suited for the harsh world in which we live. So that kind of signifies that, yeah, he knows that the world is a cool place, this world in particular, and you kill or be killed, and it seems like he's going to kill to get what he wants. And things seem to be going pretty well for him, because Sansa actually defends him from the court of senior citizens who are in charge of his possible prosecution for potentially murdering Lysa. But Sansa backs him up. I mean, she lies in court. She says, "Oh yeah, my aunt committed suicide." Well acted by Sophie Turner, by the way. And by extension, well acted by Aidan Gillen. I can now see him more as a genuinely sneaky guy on Game of Thrones, rather than just the guy who got beaten up by Bane at the beginning of Dark Knight Rises. But what else? Oh, there was one really awesome moment where, okay, if there was one recurring gripe I had on this episode, is that there was not nearly enough of Arya and the Hound, because by far, those two have one of the most amusing relationships. I'm a broken record on this, but it's true. And when the Hounds finally reached the Vale where Arya's aunt was supposed to be, so close to Sansa, so Arya is so close to a reunion with the sister that she hates. The Hound says, I brought Arya Stark to her aunt Lysa to ransom her off, and the guards just kind of tell him, Lysa's dead, and the Hound just gets this look on his face like, oh, and immediately afterwards, again, brilliantly done by Maisie Williams, who I'm shocked that this is her first role. But she just bursts out laughing. Because this is such... Oh my god, this is such a funny setback, and the fact that she bursts out laughing no tells us that yeah, they know. The creators, the showrunners know that yeah, this is kind of funny. How he's come all this way, put up with all of this verbal abuse by this stupid little girl, and gone through all this physical abuse when it comes to protecting her from whatever fights that she gets herself in. And they tell him, the person you were going to ransom her off to, she's dead. She died 3 days prior. If only you'd gotten here a little quicker. Better luck next time. And I'm like, wow, this guy can't catch a break. And speaking of the Hound, that actually brings me to the third major, or not the third, but another major plot point or major plot line this episode, which was the trial by combat involving the Mountain and Prince Oberyn, standing in for Tyrion. Now, again, I was right. The Mountain won. Although, by all means, he shouldn't have won, like I said at the beginning of this video. Because Prince Oberyn was kind of dancing around him. He was dodging all of his attacks, and I think he hit him with his spear thing multiple times, and he even stabbed him in the chest, or at least it looked like the chest. And yeah, he stabs him 3 times, and the Mountain is not moving. He's dead. The Mountain is dead, and all of a sudden Prince Oberyn kind of breaks into his little Inigo Montoya shtick, where he's like, like something Martell, you raped her children, you raped her and then you killed her, say it. And he's basically dancing around the Mountain, kind of doing like, you killed my father, prepare to die. And you know the difference, Prince Oberyn, you know the difference between you and Inigo Montoya? Inigo Montoya makes sure the job is done before he starts breaking into his little spiel. He makes sure to kill the guy when he gives his speech. When he confronts the six-fingered man, he does so with the absolute certainty that he is going to kill this guy. And yeah, there are 1 or 2 setbacks along the way, namely him getting a dagger thrown at him, but still, he made sure to actually finish the job. Prince Oberyn did not finish the job. The job looked like it was finished, but all of a sudden the Mountain gets back up like some demented zombie, and pops Oberyn's head open like a zit. So yeah, that was just a kind of ha moment, where while he was doing this, while he was killing Prince Oberyn, I was just like, oh, come on, you're dead, Mountain guy, you lose. I mean, sorry if you're a sore loser, but you lost. Ugh. But again, am I really surprised that the Mountain won? Even though he did it in a very cheap way, and in a way that should not be humanly possible. Because like I said, there was like a foot of blood on Prince Oberyn's spear. So, yeah, the Mountain's dead. Except the writers decided last minute, oh, nope, we can't kill him yet. That might actually bode well for Tyrion, so we can't have that. I shouldn't really blame the writers, though. I mean, maybe it was the fight choreographer. I don't know. The fight itself was pretty cool. I mean, there wasn't really any shaky cam, and they did pull back enough to where we could actually see the action. I don't know how much of the stunts that either one of the actors did, but yeah, really, we weren't really invested in Prince Oberyn so much, and I think that's one of the minor weaknesses of this little plot line, because we're not invested in Prince Oberyn. They have tried, but they killed him off right when he was becoming interesting. I mean, we were just getting into getting into his motivation. We were just starting to develop him into a genuinely likable character, a charismatic character, and then you kill him off. Now, what do we have left after that? Because we're not invested in his conflict with the Mountain. Because, again, unlike the Princess Bride, in which Inigo Montoya and the Six-Fingered Man each had distinct personalities, and were each distinct characters that were developed over the course of the movie, Prince Oberyn and the Mountains and their little confrontation seemed a little premature from a narrative standpoint. We have learned 4 seasons of this show, and we have learned absolutely nothing about the Mountain in terms of his personality. He has no personality. I mean, he's just that. He's Tywin Lannister's Mountain, his attack dog. So you'll forgive me if I didn't really care whether he got axed off or not. I mean, yeah, if I were betting money on this fight, then yeah, I would put my money on the Mountain. But when he killed Prince Oberyn and we're supposed to feel all bad, we don't feel bad for Prince Oberyn. We don't feel bad that he didn't get to accomplish his mission because we barely got to see it develop before all of a sudden the show ended it. We feel bad because this means that Tyrion is going to be executed. His last contingency plan failed. His last line of defense got his eyes gouged out. So we feel bad for Tyrion, but not the guy who is literally getting his face imploded by the Mountain with his bare hands. So that's kind of a weakness. I mean, like I said in the last video, I was just starting to like Prince Oberyn, and they just so that was kind of disappointing. But overall, yeah, this episode was fairly well paced, if a little slow at points, and they did pull out what I thought was the most interesting plot line right at the beginning of the episode. So all the rest of the plot lines felt weak by comparison. They weren't quote unquote weak, but they were just weaker by comparison. Like I said, I am much more invested in what is going to happen between the Night's Watch and the Wildlings than I am anything else in the show, because that conflict seems the most urgent. That conflict seems like the most immediate source of danger. Which is probably why it looks like, anyway, they're going with a single narrative for next week's episode, kind of like the battle at the end of season 2, which I think is a smart move. And I'm interested to see how the increased budget affects that fight. So, yeah, decent episode, not one of my favorites, but still kept my interest, and I guess that's what matters.